Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are here with another one of your questions about work. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future of work. We ask questions from our friends who have perspectives to offer here. And Landon and I have worked together on a bunch of things. He's at inside.com. He's also got a podcast called In Their 20s. And we've talked about the VC scene a bit. And so, Landon, you've kind of specialized in this early career moment.
Totally.
And the question I want to ask is about first job offers. So somebody gets a first job offer. They may not have context. They may never have had any, pay to use as their benchmark for what they should be getting. And so curious how you advise people in negotiating their very first job offer.
Yeah, well, I mean, sharing my unique perspective, I had 10 internships in college, and I'm right now on my second post-grad job. And at the beginning, for my first one, I was going into a big, large corporate company, and I got my offer, and I did what most people my age do, just Google and look how to negotiate a starting salary. But what I realized is, yes, there's so much wonderful information on YouTube, Google, other resources, but what else can you do to really answer that question and get a more curated answer to your own personal experience? And what I found from that is finding mentors that you can talk to in adjacent industries is super important. You might not have access. Sometimes you might get lucky, but you might not have access to people within the company before you start the job. So there are many opportunities where I look to network, reach out to people whom I considered mentors in similar industries and asking their own personal experiences. And then I'll go with the second big question that I usually love to ask when looking to negotiate and get that first salary is asking the employer how much you have to allocate to that role. I think having the transparency early on can help your judgment. So you're not asking for a number that's completely out there that you just know you might not get. But Roy, the third thing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on all these, the third thing is really knowing what you can bring to the table. So you should never just ask that question without doing your own research on yourself. What skills do you have? What past experiences do you have that make it, make you deserve whatever a higher salary or compensation package bonus you're looking for? So between those three things, talking to people, in adjacent industries, of course, you can do your own due diligence online, but really asking your employer what they can allocate for the role. And number three, knowing what you can bring to the role. I think that those are three things that are better than Google.
Yeah, for sure. All three of those things are better than Google. I'd say, my additions to it are, it really depends a lot on the kind of job. So if you're in a job where 50 people are getting hired at the same time, there's going to be a lot less room to negotiate than if you're the only one coming into a workplace. Second thing is, when you say ask the employer, I kind of think of it as there isn't always an employer. There's a person you're talking to at the employer.
Yep.
And that person may or may not know what they had. And certainly they usually don't want to tell you because it's like, okay, well then I'll take that much. And so I find a few of the questions. Now it's okay to ask still, because you can still get a shot across the bow, if you will. I don't like military language in business, but whatever. You can warn them, brush them back from the plate. There's a sports analogy. And they'll think about it. And then you can also ask other questions like, will I be paid comparably with other people who have done the same role in the past? And especially if you are in a group that is traditionally discriminated against, I think that's a really important question to ask, because then, it sort of says, hey, I'm aware of the fact that there's systemic issues here, and I expect to be paid equally. And that might cause them to look and be like, hey, look, we paid a white guy in this role this much. We can't pay anybody else less than that. That's discriminatory. And so I think and ask about that. And then the other thing I just say is there's often more than one dimension on which to negotiate. Meaning people often think about negotiating salary. Well, if it's a startup, you might need to negotiate equity. You might need to negotiate start date. You might need to negotiate who you work for. And so just figuring out which of those are important to you and prioritizing among them, I think is a wonderful thing to do. The last thing I just say is, as the world advances, there are tools for these things. You can look up salary benchmarks at certain organizations, and you can say, hey, in this industry, it looks like the median pay is X. And then even if they can't pay you that, at least they're aware that you know the data, and it'll put them on their toes. and make sure that they are that they're paying attention. And there are even a few services, maybe we'll link to them once we find them, but there are a few services where you can go out and get a private benchmark where basically it'll quietly ping people who are in the same industry who know that role. And you might not be able to do it for like a very super entry level role, but you might be able to. And then, use those techniques to build upon the kind of network that you described building and Landon. I think that works perfectly.
Yeah, I love that ownership mentality. If you want to do something like this, I think the commonality between all the points that we gave, you need to take control of it. So,
that's right. No, I think that's right. And I love your point about like knowing what the value is that you bring, because to some extent what they can pay you is like, well, what would it cost to hire somebody else to do the job?
Totally.
All right. Well, for past episodes, you can go to thisisnotadvice.work. You can hear other thoughts like this one. Soon you'll see this one come up. Landon, I love talking with you, and I would love to do more in the future.
Roy, thank you.
Anything to add before we jump?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for being such a great mentor to me and so many other people in the industry, Roy. I mean, I
want good quality coworkers, so I'm just trying to nurture the coworkers I want to have. But thank you, Landon. Totally. I really appreciate it. All right, I'll see you soon.
Roy, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you.